Don't forget to like and subscribe because it really helps us when you hit the subscribe button and you hit the like button. Leave a comment if you can. And if you're listening to the podcast and not watching, don't forget to rate and review on whatever platform it is that you're using. Welcome once again to the Dancing Sober podcast. Today's guest is Raul Baltazar. He is a painter, a videographer, a illustrator. He is a performance artist, all around jack of all art trades. Check this guy out. Look him up at raulbaltazar.com, and we're going to get started with this. Before we get started, I just want to say thank you to our sponsor, Movita Juice Bar. Don't forget to go to movitajuicebar.com so you can find a location where to get your stuff. You can also use food apps, delivery apps to get your stuff delivered. Here we go. Hey everybody, welcome back once again. Week number 4 of the Dancing Sober podcast. I want to first say thank you to our sponsor, Movita Juice Bar. Don't forget to go to movitajuicebar.com, and thank you to the people here at Outer Circle Media for providing us with this spot. Today's guest is Mr. Raul Baltazar. I've known Raul for about 10 years, 10 plus, maybe longer than that, but we didn't really start hanging out till about 10 years ago, and been friends for a while, and we get to hang out, so we get to know each other in different ways. And just Raul always brings this sense of adventure. Okay. Every time that I'm going to hang out with Raul, it's like there's going to be some shit happening, or there's going to be like things just get fun. One way or another, like it's going to be fun, and it's going to be rascuache. It's going to be fucking like you don't know what's going to happen, but you're going to have a good time. And that's really like the truth. Even a couple weeks ago, we were on a bike ride, and he had this 4-wheel, 2 steering wheel bike and another 3-wheel bike. And I ended up riding one of those, and I thought it was going to be a headache, but it turned out to be a fun, adventurous evening. It turned out to be something that was a lot of fun. Even though I was stuck riding a bike from downtown to Echo Park last minute, something I wasn't expecting to do. And the bikes were also a little janky. Anyways, Raul Baltazar always brings adventure. And that's something that you also bring to your art. I think there's a level of like mystery and adventure and darkness that people don't have in their everyday lives. You know, I think, I don't know. Let's let you start talking about art. This is another episode that is just off the cuff because we're friends for a long time. So I didn't really like jump into like any research, and we're just going to talk like we did last weekend when we were having coffee.
Okay.
Hola, Raul.
Well, thank you for inviting me. By the way, this is some great coffee.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say, like, wow.
Order your coffee.
Gourmet.
Go to shoprafa.com.
Wow. Just to say something, I couldn't sleep all last night. I was on a painting binge because of painting that I'm trying to figure out. And I had to put it inside my room, and I was just staring at it because I couldn't fall asleep. And so I started painting like at 4 a.m. till about 6. And I think I just fucked it up even more. So it's perplexing, and it's always a challenge, you know, and that's always like on the forefront of my thinking. Most of the time is like, how do I get back to like fixing this problem that I created for myself, you know?
So what's the process here? Let me see this process here. How big was the painting? Is the painting?
It's about maybe 6 feet by 4 feet.
Yeah,
you know,
because you work
6 feet tall, 4 feet wide.
You're currently working on pretty big sizes.
Yeah, there's some large acrylic paintings.
I could see you now in your living room, fucking with this painting.
No, I've taken it to my bedroom.
No, then you take it to your bedroom because you can't fucking figure it out.
I figured I might as well I couldn't sleep, so I might as well stare at something.
But what is like the thing that you're aiming at? Like, is it that you can't figure out a color? Is it that you can't figure out a tone? Is it that you can't figure out a sensation you're trying to achieve?
You know what it is? Rafa, it's a tempo. It's like if you're doing a song, I imagine, and you just all of a sudden you hit a cool beat, and you're just like, oh, okay, this is the beat, this is the hook, and you go off and you're making these lines, and you're like, oh, I got this part, I'm landing it, but then it just stops, and now you got to figure out this other area of the painting, and it's just not gelling the way the way the harmony
is. It changes the first part because you changed the second parts.
Well, it's static. That's the thing. It's there. You can go back in and change it. Every time you go back, you're gonna mess it up a little bit more. It's not gonna be as effortless and truthful with your line quality because of the tempo and the pace and the pressure that you put on the stroke. It's so immediate and perfect. Once you start fucking with that, it's hard to get back. And sometimes you just want to destroy. And I have, like, of course, there's no saving a piece. And you just chalk it up as that. And you have to, like, just discard it and move on. But there's also a part of you that's like, I got to solve this. And it's like doing math, I imagine, for people, or like a crossword puzzle.
That's what I was going to ask. What's the next step? Like, now that you're here and you lost sleep, and your head out there fucking hanging.
Yeah, I know. Must have great.
And you're ready. You're gonna go back in tonight. What's the process here? How do you approach this again, or do you just stare at it until it talks to you?
You have to be unafraid to fuck it up, and to just be irreverent. And we had talked about this before, right? Like, what is it to be irreverent in the midst of one of the only things you find as sacred, which for me is the act of painting, you know? And I find it sacred because it's like, it's unapologetically your mirror and where you're at. It's your discipline, what you're thinking about, what your skill set is, you know, where your craft is, you know, and,
so speaking on that a little bit, like how it's so much a mirror of you, and I hope that people take the time to go to your website, which is raulbaltazar.com, right?
Yeah.
And look at some of your paintings and some of these images, like as the reflection of you. How do these, how do these things come up sometimes? I mean, there's some beautiful but strange figures, and there's some also like gorgeous lines that are also like just dark and passionate. I'm thinking of I'm currently thinking about the Jesus that you did with the red pen, like the lines in that thing. Yeah, ballpoint pen Jesus with the clown nose, I think.
Yeah, all right, yeah, I remember that.
And it has some really like strong lines in that, and then you have other things that are more maybe cartoonish, but even your cartoonish things have a really dark tone to them. So do you take yourself to a place, or is this a place that you currently like just always live in, or do you just like fluctuate with that too? Like, do you go into like these really dark places and these really comical places, and then you put on a bunny suit and you run around? Like, how does this like manifest out of you?
Well, I'll just answer the thing about the piece, the clown Jesus one. It was a ballpoint pen, maybe 3 foot by 2 foot drawing, all on paper, super detailed piece. And then the center was a clown nose. So that's already like very irreverent, right? But I grew up drawing Jesus. As a kid, I would love looking at these Bible illustrations and then just like the torment of Jesus on the cross, like sweating and bleeding. And I mean, it would just be so fascinating to me, and I would draw it. And of course, my tia would be like, "Ay, ¿por qué dibujas a Diosito tan feo?" It was just like, well, whatever. I was just like, but the last thing I remember with that piece was in the center of the nose, I had a lit piece of sage, and I had just turned it off, and I had to like stick the piece of sage in there and make the final circle inside the nose to finish the piece.
Yeah.
And that's where you're just like, fuck, all this labor and everything to chance it. But I was thinking about that earlier this morning while I was painting. That's why it's antithetical to capitalism. Like the amount of labor is not set upon to just produce this thing like a factory or like just this object that you're churning out. There comes this point where you're like, all right, well, I'm gonna go back and do it. Like, it doesn't matter. And either you have to be like not as concerned with profit or like super well off or super poor or super like maybe you don't have to be those things, but you have to like just be irreverent or just not care about like the cost of labor or the cost of destruction.
So what matters most is the final product or the...
It's that moment that you have the fucking balls to just say, fuck it, I'm gonna attempt this. Why? Because I'm me and I'm willing to do that. And to me, that keeps me alive in that moment where I'm just like, like I'm fucking crazy. Like, but I have to cross that threshold of fear to make the great work of art, like to make the piece. And if not, if I'm afraid or if I'm too concerned what other people are going to think, whether I have a timeline or I have to do this, then it gets political and then it's not really art to me, And there's a lot of artists that just stick to a method. They know they're going to finish it. This is what you get. This is what I'm known for. And that's the art, So
that easily takes me into another like part of you that is like you jump from like one thing to another thing all the time. So it's really... I know you as a painter, but it's hard to say like, oh, Raul's a painter because he's also a videographer. He also makes films.
Well, I'm not a videographer. I wouldn't call myself.
Okay, well, you see, it's like really difficult to find a way to like name you because you jump from one thing to another. But the thing is, like, how does that? Because I know how it happens for me, but how does it happen for you that you just want to like, you're painting one day and the next day you're like, I want to go do that now.
It's the idea first, and then how to most effectively communicate the idea and what medium is going to dictate that, So sometimes, there's drawing, right? The drawing is a trace or a mark of where your body has been, right? Because those marks are because I do the stroke at a certain speed, in a certain position. I'm using my wrist, or I'm using my shoulder, my elbow, my body. That's making the marks, And then, of course, that's all dictated through the mind, the brain, and muscle memory that's trained.
Like people get specific kind of line quality. Yeah.
Those two holes in your skull with your eyes to see that, resonate, come back into your mind, and to keep going, and you're constantly moving with memory and the presence, right, in that dance. And then there comes a point where you move into sculpture, where now there's an object that your body is navigating around. And so through sculpture, you're creating objects that navigate the body, right, or cause bodies to navigate, to move. And of course there's this three-dimensional quality now, instead of the illusion of three dimensions, when you're really doing two dimensions. And then from there you go into the performance where your body is the sculpture. So now you're the object, you're moving through time. There's a visual quality to it and a movement, and maybe there's even a storyline or like creating a type of a situation that people have to respond to. And then could be layers of like an agitprop kind of political component to it, or protest component to it, or a ritual component to it, or like just anyhow. So there's these other layers of it, of the conceptual component. And then you document that. So that's why I use the camera or video to document those moments. But I wouldn't call myself a videographer because it's just real. I usually just get what's done at the moment. It's not. It's not staged in a theatrical form.
Yeah.
It's more about documentation of the occurrence of the real.
Yeah.
But there is a layer now of film or movie making.
Or once you get into the editing bay, and you could
with
manipulate
the editing
it a little
is where
bit,
you could manipulate things now, right? And start messing with time. Because then there's a time component. There's space. There's storytelling and movement. So there's all these layers.
Speaking real quickly, because you said something when you're doing the line that you're like working with memory and the present.
Yeah.
So like that concept really like sits with me, because there's a lot of times that I'm performing or doing something where like I'm carrying like years of stuff with me, you know, like you're carrying all this, like whatever it is that you're carrying from your personal life, you carry it and then you like let it out through words or through whatever you're doing physically. And just I want to hear a little bit more of your process with that. Like, do you sit in these kind of like thoughts and then like let them come out, or does it just fucking happen where you're?
Well, I mean, you when you say this, you make me think a lot about performance work, and that's where I always got to quote Hugo Hopping, who would talk about us being within the bandwidth of tradition and innovation. So that's like where culture lies, right? Through tradition and innovation. So like you say, what we do carry, you know, I don't like to think of it as carrying, but it could be something you carry. Maybe it's something that carries you, actually, right? But if you are carrying it, there are these moments in the performance of catharsis, right? Where you could let it go.
And you feel it,
That's what I try to create. Like, that's the apex of the performance, right? That moment of what I call momentary victories. So for that moment, like for example, when I do Tochli 7, the Aztec bunny, which is not like a bunny costume, I call it more of a what's the word? It escapes me right now, but it'll come to me. But anyhow, it's like in native dances, you have your regalia. That's the word. So your regalia is what you make. It's not a costume like Halloween, like, you know, I'm going to be an Indian. It's more like, this is how I present myself in the ritual, you know, when you do the ritual, you know, whether it's a sun dance or a sweat lodge or like, you know, different types of rituals that, you know, we do in indigenous cultures. And so this is kind of like a weird trickster character that's somewhere between tradition and innovation, and which, by the way, shout out to all my haters out there. I just wanted to say that, and closet haters too. But like, I guess that's the trickster of the bunny that's now coming out. But yeah, so when you create that, when you make your own regalia, then you create these scenarios, because now I'm the bunny. I'm no longer myself. I'm the bunny. I'm going out there into the city. I'm engaging. And a lot of this is also like with what the Situationists did. So they would like break the grid, for example. So the way we're supposed to conduct ourselves within the matrix of the city, right? You're supposed to move at the green light, stop at the black, you know, stop at the, you know,
stay in the line,
stop sign, stay in the sidewalk, What happens when you start breaking all these rules and start creating other situations that people have to confront all of a sudden, where it's like, oh damn, like things just get shaken up. So as the bunny, like that's what I would do. So I would go out, let's say for example, I did a piece where I took a 100-pound obsidian stone that I found and asked people to carry it to the top of Baldwin Hills Lookout, which is a 536-foot peak, you know. And I mean, you know, the stone is like so big, and it's literally like a big piece of glass. And it never even dawned on me until my friend Peps, who I asked to photograph, you know, but like really secretively, like discreetly. He was like, dude, if that would have fallen on someone's foot, it would have chopped their foot off. And I was just like, yeah, I can't think about those things.
That's
like,
the kind of adventure that Raul takes you on.
Like, I can't think about that.
You never know what's going to happen.
It's not going to happen, you know? Like, but yeah, so anyhow, you're creating a story. We did another piece, for example, where we pushed like a 2-ton boulder up Hill Street. It was a 2-ton boulder made out of styrofoam. But we pushed it to the steps. We pushed it up to the. It was huge, a huge boulder, I say, that looked about that big, literally, to the steps of Mocha, up Hill Street, and I recruited all these bunnies, and it was all about Sisyphus. You know, Sisyphus being the proletariat worker who works every day just to get up, do the job
every day,
go to sleep, spend the money, wake up the next day, push the stone back up, you know. So Camus called him the proletariat worker. I really love that. So at that moment, I became the worker. And when we get the stone up, it's this momentary victory. For that moment, I'm victorious over
whatever. Capitalism.
Patriarchy, you know, like, you know, culture. And I would always think, like, that is kind of tragic that it's this momentary victory. But until I heard Cornel West talk about that, like, yeah, but what is life made out of? It's just a bunch of moments, you know. Yeah. And I was just like, yeah, that's like. Well,
I think it's interesting.
That's a catharsis.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you use the word momentary victories too, because, like, a lot of times people, they try to talk to me about, like, you know, well, are you ever going to be happy? It's like, well, happiness is like just a moment, and you do have these momentary victories. Like, they don't last forever, right? When you, like, and saying that, I was just wondering if you in your life, like, can you think of, like, your real life momentary victories? Like, maybe when you graduated from college, which, by the way, Raul went to Otis, right? And where'd you do undergrad?
I did 10 years of community college, like, all over the state. And then I did 2 years of Otis. You should get 2 diplomas for that. Right. I just get a PhD in community college. And then I did my BFA in sculpture new genres, where I transferred in. And then I did my MFA in fine art and public practice at Otis, you know.
So momentary victories in your life, what do you think? Can you think of?
Oh, so I was gonna say it's never enough, and it's always too much. You know, like it's the dopamine, right? The dopamine is not when you get it; it's the fact that you have the ambition to get it. That's the shit. So when you're in the process of doing it, once you get it, the dopamine high is gone. It really is chemical. It really is the mind. It really is the puzzle, you know, it's all those things gelled up into into the chase. So that's why I did, like, for example, a piece where the bunny's chasing a carrot, you know. It's all about chasing the carrot.
That's one of the things that I've always said is, like, you know, people, because I've also done theater, film, music, and photography now, and but what I always enjoy the most is the creative process. Just the process of getting to that victory or getting to that outcome is sometimes the best part of it, right? Like, figuring it out, learning it, and, like, I mean, what you're going through right now with your painting, you know?
I mean, it's rare, right? Because there are, like,
it's so much fun, though.
You can't not.
Are you a problem solver kind of a person? Because that's, like, part of, like, my thing is, like, I want to do that, I want to figure it out, and I want to see how I get to that end point.
There's no denial that those moments, like when you move into a new place and you kick up your feet on the couch, you know, and you're just like, oh shit, okay, like, boom, like, I'm here now, like, I made it. Or when you finish a painting, you know, or, you know, anyhow, you can imagine, like, those moments, right? Or finish a race. Let's say if you're running and you finish, you know, like, those are incredible moments too. You know, you can't deny that. Yeah. But yeah, you also have to appreciate those moments. I guess that's life, right? Where you when you're open enough to appreciate all of it.
Yeah.
then you're always entertained, you're always excited, you're always in the now. You know, if you're just thinking about getting to the next place. And that's the unfortunate thing, right? With like, you know, being on your cell phone or what have you, or like you're eating breakfast and thinking about lunch, and it's like you're not there. And then when you don't have it, you're like, oh, I wish I had it. Like, how many people go into a gallery and they take a photo of the fucking painting and they don't even look at it?
Just walk from one picture to the other, and like, or one artwork to the next, just snapping all the pictures, and they walk out and get a glass of wine. And
it's a trip. I went to an auction that I was in last weekend, and it was the saddest thing ever. Talk about a tragedy. It's like, this is a work of art. This is what I dedicate my life to. I didn't know they were going to stack it up salon style, where it's like one in the midst of like 100 pieces of art.
This was a fundraiser, right?
Yeah, there's a fundraiser, so that's why I was cool with it. But you look at it and just people, they don't have the patience to stick around, like to, and it's cool. I get it. You know, I won't look at every artwork either. You know, it's very rare that a piece really calls to me, and you know, like you connect with that. Right? Yeah. You know, it's the same, I'm sure, like with music or the piano player that no one notices, you know, in the bar, or like it's setting cutthroat. It's kind of that's where it's at.
Speaking of this auction that you were just in, I know that like you've wanted to start your own auction, like a Christie's style auction. That is something that, you know, maybe can get started on the east side, where like we sell our own paintings instead of having like an outside auctioneer do it. You know, is that something that you...
These are ideas that I have, but we need to find people in our community that's what they love to do. That's their art form, that are business people, that are entrepreneurs, and to connect with artists like that. Like, I don't want to juggle 20 things.
No, it's too difficult for an artist to do that.
I'm already like...
But I just want to get those words out there. Maybe somebody
out there but maybe there's someone out there, you know, contact us. Like, we need to create an economy for our community. Without... for whatever genre, right? If you don't have an economy, like, everyone's just going to be, like, struggling in this kind of like survival mode and everything, and it's exhausting. Whatever. I'm a diehard. I've been doing this since 25 years or more.
Speaking of struggling,
you know? Yeah.
How does that work for you? I mean, being an artist, and because it's a tiny percentage of people that claim artist on their taxes and only do art and don't have like another 40-hour a week job. Like, it's a tiny percentage of people that are artists that only get paid from their art. How have you managed this for such a long time, right? Or do you have another job that nobody knows about?
No, I mean, I'm a sole proprietor. You know, my taxes as an artist, I only started doing my taxes this year. I honestly like have lived a lifestyle where it's just like didn't give a fuck about the IRS, no taxes, just living radically like on my own accord, and it's just about low overheads and finding the biggest places for the lowest amount, and just living with different people, with different artists, different art residencies. For a long time I was just traveling, you know. It's definitely a lifestyle, you know, and the fact that it's a very selfish lifestyle. You know, in a way, like you could only take on so much or do so much for people.
I've said that before too. Like when people are like, "Well, you're doing them," yeah, it is kind of selfish sometimes, because you can't do other things with your family or certain things, and things have to be your way sometimes. I get it, the selfish part. It is like something like that. It's not. Yeah, that's.
And selfishness could in a good way too, because you have to know yourself. You know, there's literally people that could never be alone throughout their day. Like,
yeah, and I love my alone time.
that's golden. Like that's what we pay. That's why we live our like. A lot of it is about solitude. A lot about of that is about, you know, this know thyself, heal thyself. You know, you can only let people in so deep if you're gonna do that. That's the that could be the tragedy of it. That's the opportunity cost for it. You know, when I'm sitting there and you think about like, man, I have all these works of art. They're really markers of all the time I've spent alone. Like I could have been at the beach. Like, you know, I could have done whatever.
That's interesting. Yeah.
I could have tried to start a family or what have you. Like, but no, I chose to do this.
Yeah.
And at the end, like, I only get so much time like everyone else in their life. Like, and this is what I chose, so I'm cool. Like, that's it. So there is this thing that, and to me, like, that's where I've gotten more ideas, like, about, oh, I want to make a movie about this, because people only see the finished products that artists make, but they don't get to see that other side of it. Like,
unless a documentary comes out later, but
and only a documentary, of course.
It only tells you a little
so
piece.
And all that.
No, I get it. I'm just messing.
But, you know, there's this point where you're possessed by the work. You know, where you're just or obsessed, you know, and I don't know. I've been that's what kind of led me to more like movie making. So I've been messing with that idea. So but that's a new genre for me. So I do that a little bit, you know, as I'm painting, take a break and kind of do that. But it's always searching for new things, because what it is to be an artist today is evolving to a level where I honestly don't know what it is to be an artist today, which is a good thing. Because if I did, then it would be a career that I would just be like bored of and not want to do. Because I don't see it as a career. To me, being an artist is not a career. You know, it's more of a lifestyle thing or a calling. I always call it like it's like being a priest without a monastery. You know, it's like just living life on your terms, and you don't, and especially if you're doing radical work. It could be a career if that's the type of artwork you do, you know, which is basically decoration.
I mean, of course,
like, you know, just
a lot of people make a career out of it, but some people just create. And that's another thing too that you do, is like you're constantly creating. And do you like try, I mean, this is going to sound probably stupid, but how do you try to get your work out? Like, do you wait for museums to reach out to you? So maybe for like other artists listening that are just painting at home and don't, you know, they just have a bunch of paintings at home. Like, how do you start to get your work seen? Or do you even want to get your work seen and shown? Like, where do you go from there? Like, because you're also like, you know, it's hard to like say what you are or what you do. So it's kind of hard to, you know, put you into a box. So how do you try to get your work shown or do you want to get your work shown in, you know?
Well, it's interesting that you say
museums.
To put me into the box, because now that's the trappings of an artist, right? You're constantly doing things to fill the box. Right. And it becomes a commodity. It becomes like your venue, right? You know, you post something on Instagram or, you know, Facebook or YouTube and gets people out there. But it's also, for me, I've noticed that it's a limited kind of venue, right? So you search for other venues and how to do it. But to me, it's interesting, because I've been around for a long time. So I've really appreciated every step of the way. So I remember being a very young artist, and of course it's all.
So real quick, just when you say young artist, how old were you and what years was this?
I mean, we could take it to
just
like,
to put it in context. Okay, was it the 80s or was it the 90s?
We could take it into grammar school, into high school. Yeah, like 80s and 90s. I graduated like in the 90s, 1990.
So when you were a young artist in the 90s,
I used to draw on top of my Bible religious book, He used to do these long dicks on Jesus. It was hilarious.
You carried a Bible around as
No, I was in a religious. I went through 12 years of Catholic school.
Oh,
So in religion class.
that explains a lot.
Yeah, in religion.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I went to All
Where'd
Saints
you go?
Elementary School and then to Cathedral High School.
Oh, okay.
So it was always about. It was funny because I mean I always say like I've changed as much as I've stayed the same. You know, like, I would always graffiti or like mess with the most sacred images in the religion book.
That's hilarious.
Because we would pass them out in the beginning of class, and so I would put a little marker on the edge of the binder of the book binding, and then we would pass them out in the beginning of class. So of course we'd give it to like the most innocent little, you know, Catholic one, and then we'd be like, "Look, turn to page 25," you know, it'd be like, ah. And I would just love it. To me, it was like so like it was hilarious. That was my bliss, my heaven. And then like in high school, it was more like I would draw people and then get out early, right before break, and then post them up. You know, so it was these funny caricatures of my friends. I took art classes and everything, but my art was really bad as a high school student. You know, some people would draw really elegantly and like really cool. Like mine was just always really.
But were you trying to be an artist then, or were you just drawing for fun?
No, I thought I was already like an artist. Okay. You know, so it was already like, you know, like I knew of Jean-Michel Basquiat and of course like Dali and Picasso. And, you know, I grew up with Chicano murals all over the neighborhood. You know. And, I mean, the first mural I remember seeing as a kid was with Tweety Bird with a sombrero, you know, and a power fist, and
that's awesome.
You know, the East LA streetscapers off of Daly when I was like going with my parents to pay the bills, utility bills. Like there was art everywhere.
To Wayne Healy,
yeah, shout out to the streetscapers. Anyhow, after that, when I went to junior college. Then it was about me. Then I met other artists, and then it was the coffee house scene, and then going into the whole DIY, like do it yourself art shows. And then I remember going into the art receptions. Going into the art receptions was always interesting because you saw the power structure. Like, ooh, this is an art world. You would see the artist over there in the corner, all these people kind of jockeying for position, talking to them, or the buzz around different artists hanging out. And then, of course, you're like that kid in the corner. You know, and especially at that time, like a lot of the art receptions were also like, you know, mostly white. Like I remember going to like La Luz de Jesus. It was only me and this other kid, Amos, who was this little Chicano, you know, Salvadorian kid, but grew up in, you know, in LA. We're LA kids, but we would throw ourselves out there to be part of different LA scenes, not only sticking to our neighborhoods. Yeah. You know,
not just the flyer parties with Adrian. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Shout out Adrian. So, you know, there was that whole ritual, and then later on you go into the art dinner, and you get invited to the whole thing after the art reception, and then you see the power structures within that. You know, so I got to see that, for example, with this artist Jorge Pardo. You know, who had like this literally billionaire lady like in Merida, this fancy like dinner, and like seeing how he controls and navigates the power structure within that with big monies, and like, you know, he's shown with Gagosian and the whole thing. And so it's like having those glimpses, right?
But as a kid, you're fucking amazed by all this, or you're just taking it in, like.
As a kid, well, as a young artist, you're like, for me, it was always like, well, it's cool to see all these famous artists and all this. I love art. I want to be an artist. But why isn't there anyone that looks like me? You know, and so that's why I always felt like, wow, I'd love to be able to get to that level to inspire other artists so that, you know, we're trudging along in these cultural kind of like, I call them low intensity. It's a low intensity cultural battle. Maybe it's even high intensity cultural battle. You know, like we have the masses. We have more and more. It's becoming apparent that we have that power as a people. But we also need to create people to support the arts in that way, especially for fine art, and to
you were saying last time
collect.
that we need our own Jay-Z, like
Yeah, and it's not only one person, of course. It's like a community,
But we need-
Yeah.
well,
an
somebody like
educated
that to
group,
lead
yeah.
the way, to say like, look, let's invest in our own artists. Somebody,
Yeah.
some Chicano or some, Latinx person out there with enough money to start a trend of like
Yeah.
collecting. I mean, we do have some
Cheech
collectors.
Marin's doing his thing.
we have
Of course, he hasn't bought any of my work. But,
shout out Cheech.
shout out
We
to
have a
Marin.
We have a handful of collectors, that we respect, and they do a really good job of buying art, archiving for futures. I don't know, but we do need, like you're saying, like somebody like a Jay-Z, but in our community that can make it a popular thing to be a collector.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's just, well, this is a thing. Okay, so for me, for example, like I don't have a huge art collection, but I have an archive.
Mm-hmm.
So it is about these collectors creating an archive, right? Where it's not just about like flipping
Yeah.
paintings or like, well, and then at that we don't really even have a secondary market, but it's about, like, I think creating that cultural content to be able to teach, with it, with trying to teach a generation that hasn't even been born yet, because we are the majority. We're going to keep becoming a bigger majority, and it's very easy for us to become white in the way that like whiteness is a fabrication. It's fitting into this Americanism where you drop your culture to just go through the mainstream and assimilate, right? And if we're just a bunch of brown white people, literally in the future, 100 years from now, completely forgotten about, like, maybe those people are going to want to come back and look at what their tradition was, and right now we might be the innovators. Later on we could be the tradition, and so to me it goes back to very indigenous practices, like the 7 generations, right? You do something and you think about the 7 generations before you and the 7 generations after you, and that's why you do what you do. Like, there are guiding principles to this. As an artist, you might want to keep some of your best paintings, as your bank account, like, and then hope that maybe later on that could help and save you, help you along the line. But yeah, the art market and all that, that's a whole other animal. That's not my expertise at all. I really would love to talk to more and more young artists, because it takes a whole village to do that. You need curators, art historians. You need people who know the market. People who...
I think I've noticed the trend in more young people getting into college to learn art history, to become curators and to become archivists, and I've seen a trend in that. A lot of young people are doing that now, so maybe the future does hold something in that sense, where there's going to be a lot of people skilled in that, and it's going to happen,
Yeah.
Because we didn't have people like that back in the days, but now
we did, but it was very small.
A few, yeah, just a tiny bit. But I've seen a lot of that trend happening, or that there is a lot of new curators and people just wanting to be in the art world and have the other jobs, the peripheral jobs in the art world, So
yeah.
I think that's a good thing.
It's also an industry.
It's definitely an industry.
But and my whole thing where I get a little weary about it, it's like there's the trappings of it where...
But the thing is, like, you want to just focus on the art.
That's
so
why I'm a
when
crazy
you don't,
artist. Like,
because you want to just be able to focus on
like,
the art and let other people do the other stuff. But you have to let go of some of the control. You have to let go, or there's no way to even control some of these waves of things that are happening. Like,
I can't produce things for trends that people are gonna consume or think are cool.
You want to make timeless work? Do you do that intentionally, or do you like? Does it just happen? I mean, I think your work's timeless. That's why I'm saying that.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't want to do faddish work. You know, I don't want to just co-opt culture and turn it into a commodity. And that's what I see a lot, which is what's happening. You know, like shout out to Shepard Fairey, but you know what he did when he took the aesthetics of They Live, which was where, you know, you put on the glasses and you could see the subtext to all these advertisements, to the bare, like, you know,
subtext.
This controlling patriarchal subtext. And now that becomes the actual artwork, but it's supposed to be radical. And it's like, no, man, like that's where we're at now as a culture. And so these radical political murals are now like the markings of gentrification. You know, it's like, it's a very interesting space that we're living in, you know, as an artist or making, like now trying to make murals is so odd to me because it's like, it's so decorative. And the fact that you do these pretty murals that are gonna look good for a new building that's just been made, or the city or the county has like 40 people involved to create the aesthetics that are not gonna offend anyone, and you end up with this super controlled, like co-opted, like bland public work that then just gets graffitied.
Do you
because people don't want to see it, because it's
that's
just
been
like
your gripe lately, is how they don't take care of that,
and
like,
now or it becomes an advertisement, right? It's an advertisement that's posing as a mural, and so I don't know, it makes me think like, oh man, I really love like these murals that are inside of a Mexican restaurant, you know, that are just honest about who they
came
are.
In there and painted,
it's
you know,
just
a little,
carnitas,
right?
and it's this little pig getting boiled, you know, and
but anyhow, on this same topic though, with like the muralists that we had growing up, and you know the things, you know, the counterculture murals that we grew up with, and like a lot of the stuff that we're seeing now, do you think there's room for both? I mean, because, you know, it is a larger industry now. Do you think there's room for people that make the pretty murals as well as the people that make the counterculture murals? What do you think, like, about that? Is it a wide enough world?
Of course. You know, I mean, it's like music, right? There's like Blink 187 or like the
Blink 182.
I don't know. I mean, like the poppy stuff.
I know.
And then there's like John Coltrane or, you know, Miles Davis, right? Like, you know, like who do you want to be in that way? Like, I mean, sometimes it's the starter for people, and then they go deeper into the genre, or they see why this is what it is.
Yeah, I get it.
You know?
You mean it's a starter for like observers to be like, oh, I like that, and then they get into other muralists? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Sometimes it's just as violent as a crazy ass bomb, you know, like graffiti bomb, to see this really nicey mural, and I kind of do hate them very often. I'm just like, fuck.
They're offensive.
I'd rather see the brick, than you know, this like weird signage that everything's okay. You know, I don't know, it's crazy.
No, you're not wrong. I mean,
right?
it's a matter of taste, and it's a matter of like, you know, how you navigate the world, and you know,
there's nothing worse than bad art.
And just to be like, como se dice, the devil's advocate or whatever, because I have this problem with a lot of things. Like, some people just don't agree. I like the gritty, the dark, you know, the reality, the fucking stuff that comes from, you know, deep. But there's also people that just, you know, they just want to go to work every day. They just want to come home, and they just want to watch TV, and they just want to see a pretty mural, you know? And so
that brings us back to they live,
so,
right?
Yeah. So in that sense, like, are we saying that they don't deserve murals?
Okay, let me give you an example. Okay, I used to do public art and teach workshops inside of juvenile halls. And I really would think about it deeply. Like, it's fucked up enough that these kids are locked in cages, like in these buildings, these day rooms for 22 hours a day. And then they get to go outside for 2 hours. And then now we're going to do a shitty mural inside of this day room. And now they're going to be forced, or the kids that aren't even there yet are going to be forced to look at this bad artwork. And so I would just think to myself, like, at the very least, the only thing that's going to save this is that the kids participate in it as much as possible so that they own it. And I'm just going to be a facilitator, and to really help bring out the best, like as an orchestrator. Not like, this is what's good for it. This is going to make you feel good, or this is going to make you feel nice, or don't worry, we're going to do a forest scene so that you think you're outside, but you're really locked in here for 22 hours. Like, so those are the kind of things that are going on in my head. Well, and a lot of this whole gentrification movement, when people started calling us out as artists, as art washers, like, that hit me hard. And I was like, oh shit, I better listen. Like, and it was cool that they called us out to task as well. We're not these like cultural saviors that we think we are very often, right? And we could be used very easily because we're fucking like trying to make some feria, and like someone throws at you $10,000 or whatever.
Numbers
like,
you don't fucking hear often.
You're like, all right, well, fuck, I'll do a gig. It's a gig, right? But it's like if you're an actor. And if you keep doing certain parts, right, that are like, let's say the si senor, like si senor, and then, and you're always that dude.
Thinking batches.
And then later on, you want to be seen as a great actor, but people are like, no, but that's the si senor dude. Like, and you're like, no, I'm a great artist. I've been a working artist. Yeah, okay, that's granted. You're the working artist. You're that, but you got to make those choices throughout your career,
and sometimes you suffer financially.
But it takes a lot of courage to say no, senor.
We've both said no a few times.
Senor, I don't want to do that job.
It hurts. It hurts sometimes to say no to a big number, but sometimes you have to.
I think it hurts more to say yes, and then you're fucked with a shitty job, and then it's a shitty project.
Yeah.
And then you're like, okay, now I have experience. Now I'm not going to take one of those gigs anymore.
Yeah.
That was the one good thing that helped me out with art school. That at least it gave me that knowledge and that kind of those fucking degrees to be able to say, like, nah, I'm cool. Like, I see how all these other artists who are making it, like, in their way, like, navigate, like, I know a lot of this art history now. Like, I have a strategy that I've worked on for the last 2 years and fine-tuned, so I could get where I want, and so I could keep my practice consistent to say what I want to say. Like, this is going to sidetrack me. Like, I'm like, no, thank you, But it took a long time. It took, for me to get to that point. You have to have a certain amount of cachet. Like, at first when you just start, I remember we had those conversations, right? Like, you just got to get out there and do it.
By the way, Raul is like the first person that I called when somebody asked me for an artist statement. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
I was like, I need an artist statement. I don't know what to do.
Oh my God. I have a collection of art statements for it. It's funny.
Yeah, you helped me out that time. That was like my first artist statement. But yeah, definitely. I mean, I did want to ask you though, like, if you wanted to, I don't know. I mean, this is kind of like a, one of those Vogue magazine questions or whatever. But if you wanted to be remembered as one thing, like one genre, or like would you want to be remembered as a painter, as a performance artist, or like, how does Raul want to go down in history?
I mean, I couldn't.
Or just the fucking fighter that you are.
Well, it's just like,
the rebel.
No, well, I mean, it's very common in postmodern art practices to vary in different genres and to, use different mediums. I mean, I call myself transdisciplinary, practice, like that I have a transdisciplinary practice. I'm moving more and more towards actually a storyteller. And I think maybe that's why I haven't been so successful in falling into these different genres or like in these art markets. Because at the end, I think all this has been telling a story, and I want to tell that story.
Similar.
And the artwork helps to tell that story. They are like, those are my storyboards in a way. And so
there's narrative in your work, which is
there's definitely a narrative, and I love trickster tales. I love going into like these deep like stories that are literally thousands of years old, question authority, are humorous and everyone could understand, and are profound, more profound than a lot of the art theory that I've read, that just like, because of the years, it's filtered down to the most simplest form, to like let us locate ourselves or where we're at today as a people.
So just as a like question, let's say everybody in LA died and all your work is at your house, and in the future somebody from another city finally comes to your house and finds all your artwork. How do they know how to decipher your work, or do they? Is there like stories that are attached to them? Is there something they'll find that explains things, or is it just
they would have to go to that black plastic bag and open up the sketchbooks that I've had since I was in high school and read them, and then go into my 150 videos, of DV tapes.
I've seen that drawer that you have.
All the videos I've done since the 90s, and look at the movies, and then from there go into the website there's a lot of, it's an archive.
Yeah.
And they could read some books. That
person that does all that after therapy can write.
Yeah, exactly. And they could really. I'm leaving behind a lot of work for a lot of people if they care about it. If not, it's gonna end up in the fucking dumpster or at a thrift shop. And that's
I'm only saying this because like I've been in your house and you have some fucking amazing works like that are just sitting there, and I mean I would like for you to show work. I know you would like to show work too, but there's something that doesn't like let you show in certain places. Sometimes it's you, sometimes it's the location, sometimes it's
timing.
Just,
right?
Timing. Yeah, that's also true. Like, it's one of those things where like you don't know when it's going to happen, but when it happens, it's the right time.
It's like, for example, I look at the artwork that's happening now, and like everything is non-offensive, really pretty. Like, it's a lot about dignity, not to poo-poo on it, but it's a lot about dignity, us at our best. It's about black and brown bodies in leisure, black and brown bodies in beauty, not laboring, not all tragic, not being destroyed, which is what we're used to. So in that way, it's a very healing time right now with the arts. So people might not want to see like this destructive middle-aged body in a painting that's just like fucking dealing with death. And
there's people like us that do.
You're right.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that love to see
people,
that.
but it's right? Like you see waves, when you're in the game long enough, you're like, oh, okay, this is what's going on right now.
Yeah.
And then later on, people go back and like, oh, let's bring back like these older artists and what they were doing, and So, and there's a time where you just want to drop the fuck out, and you just want to live and be obscure, and not have to deal with all like the latest, trying to keep up,
Well, I definitely see you as one of those artists that will be, in the history books, because you have been around like a lot of important movements as well, and a lot of the people in the artwork know you, and art world know you and your work. I don't know. I just know that Raul Baltazar is a historical.
I'm the obscure of the obscure. No, I don't know. It's a weird space.
Real quick, because we're getting down to our last minutes. Is there anything that that we didn't talk about that you want to talk about?
Wow.
Give him a minute.
I know. I don't know what.
You don't have to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think.
I mean, we covered a lot. We covered a lot. I think we were just going through the last thing when I was telling you about like. There's one thing we didn't really cover, which is, of course, one of the best things I love in my talks with John Valadez, is about subversion, art as a subversive tool as well. You know, and doing certain artworks where they don't belong, and where you find the fissures in society, and you just like put your work in there. Like I did that inside of a naval ship, where I put this Chicano kind of like UFW symbol inside of a Navy ship, or like, you know, certain works inside juvenile halls, you know, where it always reminds people like we're here, we're not going anywhere. Like we found access to these places where most people in society will never see, you know. I always call it like the belly of the beast. So I've kind of like, you put a placazo inside the belly of the beast. So in that way, like maybe in my career, like I've had access to those spaces. So in a way that's been very successful, you know, where I might not be in these other big old spaces, you know, but I'm in these weird little dark recesses and spaces that a whole other people that might never see artwork get to see and access. You know, so that to me is also interesting, you know, within the art making. But, you know, just, you know, back to that young artist, it's just step by step, and little by little, one thing leads to another. So, for example, Max Duron, who was, you know, this young kid who saw some of my art shows, later on becomes a writer for Art Forum, and then puts me in an article for top 15 LA artists to look at. And then some curator looks at that, calls me up to do this performance piece for the No Rona piece. And all of a sudden I'm working with a budget to do, or wait, maybe you could X that out. I don't think I'm supposed to say. I did sign an NDA.
All right.
So yeah,
I'll just bleep it.
Yeah, bleep that. But all of a sudden, I get a call out of the blue, and I'm working with this huge budget to do this big performance piece. And I asked her like, well, how did you hear of my work? You know, and it's because of that article. And then from there, I went to my website. You know, and then I has a phone number on there. She was able to contact me, and then from there, so it's like. One thing's always leading on to the next.
And the more things you leave like that, the more calls you will get more frequently, right?
And at the same token, if you're not good to work with, if you're too high maintenance, if you're not on time, if you know, then you burn all your bridges and then you don't get the gigs. You know, so I always say it's like it's a small world and a long time, you know, like for being an artist, right? And
well, I want to say thank you very much for being here. Shout out to Wayne Perry for the mug. One more thing, of course, like we always end with the question. If you could answer in one sentence for all the people that wonder how it is that Raul Baltazar does it. Raul, how do you do it?
I don't know how I do it. I just do it.
I'm going to try that one more time.
Shout out Erica Elizondo.
Raul Baltazar.
How do I do it?
How do you do it?
Low overhead, beer, smokes, good music, great friends, and a short memory.
I love it. Thank you very much.
All right.
And please don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to rate and comment on the audio platforms. And another shout out to our sponsor, Movita Juice Bar. And a big thank you to Outer Circle Media here at the location. And yeah, please check out the vlog. We're going to be giving out a bike soon. And tell your friends to subscribe. Thank you very much, and we'll see you at the next one.